Hi, it's Jamie, and this is my final video for the IGP 2020 Summit. First, I will introduce myself in Chinese and talk about the university that I went to, the classes that I took, and the experience that I had at my university. Then I will discuss my fieldwork experience and some of the obstacles that I overcame during COVID-19. And then finally, I will talk about Chinese culture. In Chinese, I will talk about the food that I tried, the places that I went to, and the teaching style that I experienced at the university. And then for the remainder of the video in English, I will talk about the cultural dimensions that I experienced firsthand. 大家好，我的英文名字是 Jamie，我的中文名字是何敏。去年我在北京的2外学国语言学习汉语。我上了次及汉语课、综合课、口语课、听力课和读写课。我的老师教得很好，第一学期后，我的汉语进步了很多。我也交了很多朋友，我喜欢我的朋友。Now I'm going to talk about my fieldwork experience. So towards the end of my semester at my university in Beijing, I had an internship lined up with Bisetti, which is a multinational corporation based in Shanghai, and they sell computer software to companies and optimize their data and technological knowledge. I was hired to be an HR intern, and my main job was to hire potential internees that were applying for certain positions in the company. I chose this internship to learn more of the economic side of international affairs. However, this changed due to COVID-19 and my plan had to be modified. At the time, towards the end of my winter vacation, I was traveling from Taiwan to Shanghai because my internship was about to begin and I had to prepare and get situated. Then at the Taipei airport, I had received an email from the IGP team saying that the students in China had to evacuate due to COVID-19. At the time I was boarding, I got in contact with my IGP advisor at the time, my parents, and the internship company to help guide me through my evacuation. During this short amount of time, I had learned problem solving and decision making skills in a different cultural context. In regards to China's decision making, the government was very vigilant. They implemented strict quarantine measures. There were curfews. Everyone was wearing masks. And when I went to the airport in Shanghai, security guards were taking temperatures and doctors were checking for symptoms. During this time, I also had to apply my Chinese language and cultural skills in order to evacuate from China. I first had to communicate with the apartment complex to tell them that I was leaving, and I also had to communicate with the taxi drivers in order to get to the airport. I remember one time when I was on my way to the airport, the taxi driver actually got lost and could not find my location, so I had to go to the front of the apartment complex and find a security guard. And I remember telling one of the security guards, Nineng Bangwoma, which means, can you help me? And so he helped me get to the airport on time by telling the taxi driver where I was. I also followed the measures implemented by the government by quarantining, sticking to the curfew, and wearing my mask. When I returned home, I regrouped with the IGP team and my professors to figure out an alternative to my internship. By summer, I was offered an opportunity at the North American Research Partnership, which was a nonprofit think tank based in Arizona. This internship was I had to do at home. It was remote based, and my main tasks were to conduct market research and to focus on the topic of global shift of supply chains. For market research, I found funding opportunities that fit NARP's interests, such as economic development, trade, sustainability, and healthcare. For my research pertaining to the global shift of supply chains, I created a fact sheet and wrote a paper covering topics such as the US-China trade war, COVID-19, and North American trade. So now I'm going to talk about what I learned from this research. In regards to the US-China trade war, US economic measures imposed by China were the initial push towards the reconfiguration of supply chains. Export controls, sanctions, and tariffs had caused US supply chains to shift away from China into other places such as European Union countries, Mexico, Vietnam, and Taiwan. In reaction to this, China had circumvented their goods through Vietnam, and they increased their export flow to places such as Europe, Canada, and other Asian countries. So it can be concluded that the US-China trade war had shifted US supply chains away from China. In regards to COVID-19, global supply chains were facing disruptions and slowdowns. Companies and governments had to close down non-essential manufacturing. Companies were facing interruptions in product and inventory flow, especially ones dependent on China. And there were shortages in medicine and essential goods. This had convinced companies to re-strategize and rethink their supply chains so they can become more resilient. Finally, in regards to North American trade, Mexico played a major role in the shift of nearshoring U.S. production. This had been caused due to the US-China trade war and COVID-19, as US supply chains had to find alternatives to China. The benefits that come with nearshoring production to Mexico are decreases in shipping and labor costs, and it makes supply chains more resilient. I also found that Canada was also re-strategizing their supply chains due to tensions with China, even though they had well-established trade and investments there. This is an example of how there's a push towards trade regionalization, especially in North America. And as a result of the global shift of supply chains, international trade is moving into the direction of supply chain diversification and trade regionalization. Now I will talk about culture. 我觉得中国文化很有意思，中国菜很好吃。在北京，我吃过了糖葫芦、北京烤鸭、煎饼、火锅和番茄炒蛋。我也参观了很多地方，我看到了长城、紫禁城和颐和园，这些地方很漂亮。我没有去看京剧，但是我对学习京剧感兴趣。在中国大学，中国学生很努力，他们学习很多。在中国大学，我觉得老师教汉语很快。在中国学汉语比在美国难多了。So after studying abroad in China, I had experienced some of Hofstede's cultural dimensions. And I'm explaining culture in this way because I feel it is a good way to explain cultural difference and understanding. Some of the cultural dimensions that I experienced firsthand was a high power distance, collectivism, and a high level of long-term orientation. And speaking of high power distance, this means the the distribution of power among society. So in China, um, power distance is very high because it is a very hierarchical society. I definitely noticed this in the university, and the relationship between the student and teacher, where the Lao She was seen as a very high individual at the university, and in turn, the student would show respect to the Lao She through communication and through certain communication, and there was definitely less questioning and higher respect towards the teacher. Now talking about collectivism, which means how the individual places their goals and interests in relation to the group. So after talking to some of my Chinese friends who were at the university, I could tell that they placed a lot of their goals and interests in relation to their family. Um, so they would determine their success in relation to their family, and doing well in school meant doing well for their family. Finally, long term orientation means thinking of the future in the long term. So I saw at the university, a lot of students were studying long hours. They would go to the library or study halls from the morning till night and work really hard towards their school. So I saw that there was a high level of long-term orientation because students were focused on bettering their future. So this is my presentation. 谢谢，再见。